Good evening, everyone. Welcome back for another episode of Tales of Tamriel. I am your humble host, Aggelos, and with me this evening, I have my lovely co-host, she who feeds on your tears, the slayer of all Dwemer spiders, Thais. How are you doing tonight, Thais?
I'm doing quite well. I'm always excited for a new show because I can't wait to see how you introduce me. It changes every show, so that's always exciting for me.
I try to switch it up every week to add a little something, but I was actually sitting there at sad for a couple minutes, trying to figure out exactly what I was going to say to you this time, because I already used the crusher of spider eggs, and I want to do something about your fear of spiders. Unfortunately, the only thing I could think of is the Dwemer spider, so for next week it's going to be a challenge. I'm going to have to sit down one day and do nothing but write down little taglines for you, and I'll just like cross them off every time I use one of them.
I'm actually surprised you keep mentioning spiders because I do have severe arachnophobia. So last week when you said that, I was quite shocked that that was my introduction.
Well, I could have went, frantic crusher of spider eggs, like, ew, spiders! But ooh, that's a good one. I had that for next week. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, do we have a show for you this evening? First off, I did want to mention that we are in the process of moving our site to a new hosting service. The move is done already, like all the content and everything is over there. The server's up and running. But I just wanted to let everyone know that this is what we were doing in case there were any hiccups. I know earlier this week I had a slight hiccup with the iTunes feed. Not exactly sure why, but it seems to have retired the old feed and created a new one, even though the RSS feed address did not change. I know I needed to resubscribe to our podcast on iTunes, and it actually showed that I had two Tales of Tamriel in my podcast list, but only one of them was updated. The new one was updated. When I searched on iTunes, only one came up, so any new subscribers should be okay. I'm not really sure what's going on there. But it only seems to be iTunes subscribers that seem to be affected. I checked on Stitcher Radio and Podkicker, and there were no duplicate feeds there. So it must have just been iTunes being screwy. I did want to apologize for any inconvenience this has caused to any of our fans. I'm sorry about that. I'll make sure that does not happen again. The feed is moved, so it shouldn't happen again. But anyway, the new host is actually going to be really cool because there's some big changes to the sites that I will be coming in the next couple weeks. The new host provides us with a lot more control than we had before. I have access to a full server now versus just a web panel. I can do all sorts of cool stuff with it. So expect some changes on talesoftamriel.com. But please be advised that there, as of right now, because I have the framework out there, but not a lot of the content, a lot of it's still sitting there in draft form, that several pages are still blank. The main page is still going with the feed, and that's fine. The other ones are just blank until I can finalize the design and put them out there. So please bear with us while we work on that. Lastly, and for fun, NDA has lifted. Yay, NDA gone. So we have a fun-filled beta discussion show planned for you guys. So why don't we just get into it right now? Game news. We'll go over this real quickly. Creating ESO anchors came out. Thais, did you see this article?
I did. I really loved reading it and everything they went through to try and make the Dark Anchors an epic experience for everyone traveling around the world.
Yeah, I love these creating ESO articles they come out with. They do it from time to time whenever they release some new bits of news or they want to highlight a current aspect of the game. And this particular one was on the Dark Anchors. Little lore side of it is apparently these are from Molag Bal, and he's created these giant world-rending constructs, as the website says, that are used to pull Nirn into Cold Harbor. So that's kind of crazy. it rips a hole through the plane of Oblivion and just trying to merge our two worlds together, which is kind of neat. And if you've played Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion, it's he's kind of going the opposite way because in Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion, Mehrunes Dagon was ripping holes in the fabric of Oblivion and invading Tamriel, whereas Moly Ball's too lazy to do it himself. He just wants to pull it into his realm. He doesn't want to leave home, apparently. So, kind of lazy. Anyway, so since the NDA is lifted, we can say that we have been in beta and we have been enjoying these things. Have you run across a Dark Anchor yet in beta?
I actually haven't. My beta experience has been pretty much me going, oh, what's over there? Quest? Oh no, what's over there? Another quest. Oh wait, what's over there? Another quest. And then I just kind of get lost in the world. So I have not seen an actual Dark Anchor yet. Although I can't wait to run into one, especially since in reading this article, what I'm most excited about with this is to hear the sounds that they have created for this epic experience, because from what they say, it's supposed to give you the perfect "oh no, it's the end of the world" soundscape. So I'm really excited to hear the music and the sounds that they have created just for these events.
Yeah, let's check out what ESO has to say about this. I'm going to read this for you guys. It says, when they set out to create the Dark Anchors, they had very specific goals in mind. They wanted them to be an immediate, obvious reminder that Tamriel is in danger, something that we as the players see in the world to make you realize just how dire the situation is. They wanted to include more challenges for small groups and provide more options for gameplay activities. When you see a Dark Anchor, it gives you a chance to say, oh, I'm going to go check that out, explore a little bit more of the world, and experience a formidable encounter that will encourage you to team up with allies. From there, who knows? Maybe you'll go back to what you were doing before, or maybe newly formed group will go on an adventure together some more. There's some screenshots here in the article as you go down. It says, in our first few iterations, the anchors were smaller than they are now and much more local. As we continued working on them, they felt they didn't have the impact of the world-threatening magical machine should, so they started taking on some difficult technical challenges to give them more of a huge scale that they deserved. They wanted us to see them from a long distance, and the closer you got, the more you wanted to feel like the world was ending. Then they said they really cranked them up, creating an impressive cultist summoning event and scaling up the art and effects to enormous proportions. Of course, sound is a critical part of the Dark Anchor experience, as Thais was going on. What does it sound like when a huge Daedric construct tears a hole between Tamriel and Oblivion? Their sound designers knew what they had. They had to get it just right, and they worked to carefully combine sounds to create that perfect "oh no, the world's at its end" soundscape. After seeing a Dark Anchor, you expect to hear metallic sounds like heavy chains, and you will, but you might not expect sounds of pitched down tubas and freight trains in the mix. That's kind of an interesting sound, to be honest, trying to think of that. But yeah, so I'm interested to see the sound stuff as well. As we go down the article, I'm not going to read all of this. They talk about the rewards that you will encounter from the Fighters Guild. So apparently this is part of the Fighters Guild quest chain, or at the very least part of how you advance in their quest line. Did you see that?
Not that the Fighters Guild interests me. I'm more of a Thieves Guild, Mages Guild kind of person.
Anyway, yeah, I like the Fighters Guild, so that'll be fun. A lot of special achievements and special cosmetic gear apparently from advancing in the Fighters Guild through this. So yeah, I've actually run across the Dark Anchors, and Thais, you've seen me run across these when we were doing the beta events. Don't you remember me heroically walking up to one of the monsters, attacking it, and then going, "Oh dear," and running away?
Yeah, you have the tendency to, when you see something, try and kill it yourself, which when you were reading the part where it says, find allies to help you, I'm thinking to myself, or you could be like Egg and just try and kill it all alone and then die ruthlessly multiple times in a row.
Well, I'm apparently kind of a masochist in this regard. Masochist is the right word, right?
Yes.
All right, I wasn't sure. I'm like, oh, am I? Yeah, I like inflicting pain on myself, hence why I've been playing on Legendary, apparently. But yeah, I know in one part of these dark anchors, they actually work in phases, where the first few phases are a little easier, and as you're going through them, different waves come out, and they get harder and harder as you go along. Apparently, the dark anchor that I stumbled upon during beta had already had a few phases of it done, and when we came into it, I was already up to the boss encounter part, I guess, because I guess the people who advanced the quest line or the Dark Anchor that far had given up and left, and I just happened to stumble upon the Daedroth that was coming out, and I could not take it by myself. All right. Well, do you have anything else on the Dark Anchors they use?
I really want to try one out, but I definitely want to try it out with allies, because I'm not brave like you. I'm the kind of pew-pew behind a rock person, so there's no way I could do it on my own.
What is that famous line? There's a thin line between bravery and stupidity. I think I tend to try to go in brave, but it ends up being stupid because I end up dying. So it happens. All right. Next part of our game news, there has been a swarm of hands-on impressions since the NDA release. Again, we talked about this a little bit last episode because we talked about some of the PvE impressions, and most of them are not very positive. I don't even want to do the honor of giving names of some of the reviews because I really don't think they should even get the page views from their rather shallow reviews, because it doesn't even sound like they've ever even played the game or really care. They're just trying to get some views, so I'm not even going to go over that. But a lot of them have been pretty negative for the first couple starting levels. What do you think about the beginning starting level of beta?
It's hard to judge any game within the first few levels because nothing is truly open to you. So to even give an opinion on it in any way is still kind of shallow, even if it's positive, because there's just not much you can do in those beginning levels. But that being said, I thoroughly enjoyed my beginning levels, because even in those early levels, there's just so much to see and so much to do. As I've said multiple times, I got lost 10, 12 times just walking a few feet because the world is so alive and rich that there's people calling out to you, and there's towns, and there's bandits, and there's caves, and there's things to gather. So I personally enjoyed my first few levels, and I can't wait to reach higher levels to see what else the game has in store for me.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's just the first couple levels. Yeah, I'll say it starts slow, but to be honest, I don't think it starts as slow as some MMOs, so I don't see what their complaints are.
I don't feel like it started slow at all, especially with how active the intro or tutorial section was. I mean, it places you right in the game, and as soon as you start off, you see all kinds of people running around you, and you're in the cold harbor, and you're really questioning what's going on around you. It immediately sucks you in to this world that you already feel the impending doom with how dark and dreary the beginning section is. And then as soon as your soul is released back into the world, there's immediately all kinds of options. Now in a game I've played WoW for many years, and the beginning levels of WoW are absolutely dreadful. It's boring. There's not really much of a story. There's nothing going on. There's all kinds of go for quests, go for this and go get that and go kill 10 of these. It's just boring. I in no way felt bored from ESO. Not at all.
I'd hazard to say WoW's boring up until you got into the Lich King stuff where they really got into questing. So pretty much the first 60 levels were boring to me. It was. I didn't find it very fun at all. That was the grind that I had to get through. All right, we're going to skip by this section because I really want to talk more about this, but I don't want to steal from our other section. So, the next part of the news was the press had an NDA drop for PvP this week as well. And quite the 180 that was done from their hands-on PvE reviews for the first 15 levels. Their PvP reviews were actually very positive. Have you seen any of these?
Yes, I have. Yes, I have. And it looks like it's going to be very difficult. The PvP videos that I watched, it looked chaotic, and there was just people, groups of people swarming other groups of people. And with the active combat system in this open world PvP, it's not something that it's just not going to be face roll. You're actually going to have to try, and you're going to have to watch all of your surroundings. It's going to be something that's difficult and in depth. It really is.
Yeah, I saw a lot of the different PvP videos, and most of the people were saying how much fun the PvP was in this game, in Cyrodiil and whatnot. And it actually brought back pretty fond memories of me for Dark Age of Camelot, because that's what it felt like to me. I'm sitting in there watching them storm the keep. It was actually one of the videos that was released was from one of the guilds in beta. I can't remember the name of them at the moment, but they actually showed. Like you could hear them on their voice chat program, probably Venner or TeamSpeak, whatever it was, and they were just going back and forth while they were sieging this keep. And you saw them up there. They breached the walls. They were on top of the walls with trebuchets and ballistae and oil, yeah. And they were sitting there holding the walls. They were targeting the one gate, and you hear them like trying to keep the people down. You see this guy running back and forth along the wall, shooting with his bow, keeping the enemies from coming up on the side of the wall that these guys had taken over. And then you hear the guy rally and give a call saying, "Come over to me." And this is one part that I really liked that they showed in beta is the ability to put markers on the ground. I know Warcraft didn't have that for a long time. But this game, he actually put a giant blue marker, like a big pillar of light on himself. It was like everyone rallied to the marker. And when they got to the marker, the guys up on the wall were still pounding this gate with ballistae and trebuchets. And they're like, hold on, as soon as that gate goes down, we're going to rush in. We're going to rush to the left. We're going to run up to the ramparts of the actual keep itself. And you see that wall go down. You see all these guys jump over the stairs and run into the building. And they're pulling out their weapons and they're running up these stairs, getting up to the what is it called on a castle? The top part. It's the ramparts, but there was like a balcony kind of thing. And they made that their holding ground. And they set up there, and you see them pouring hot oil down on the flag, trying to keep the enemy at bay. Because I know, unlike Dark Age of Camelot and Guild Wars 2, the way they're doing their castles is instead of killing a keep lord, they have different flags in the keep that you have to have people to stand on, and it kind of like fills a bar saying that you're capturing it. The more people on it, I guess, the faster the bar goes up. I don't know that part yet. But that's essentially what you're doing is you have to hold these capture points, and after you capture all of them, the keep is yours, which is kind of neat. But they were doing that.
I agree with that method more than other methods I've seen, especially in Guild Wars 2. Because if you had a big enough group and you zerged that keep captain, that was it. And no one else stood a chance because your group would just ignore anybody in this keep and run straight to that one NPC, and then it was just done. When you're doing it this way, you actually have to organize more to make sure your people know where they're heading to capture each of these flags. And it gives their PvP much more depth to it than it just being one NPC with no HP. So this is really interesting to me. I'm definitely going to be trying this out, even though I'm not much of a PvP person, but I definitely will.
Well, I know you liked PvP in Guild Wars 2, and this is very much similar to that because I don't think you played Dark Age of Camelot, which is a shame because that was an amazing game. Still is. And actually, off topic and rabbit trail, but I actually got an email saying that they're doing like 15-day free trials again. I was half tempted to restart my account, but yeah, that's an old school game right there. Awesome. But yeah, I've not actually seen the capture the flag kind of thing in a keep siege type game. They normally always have a keep lord that you have to kill. But the flags do seem interesting. I'm curious if they're going to, and this is speculation by the way, if different keeps are going to have different amount of capture points, or if they do maybe on different levels, or I wonder how ZeniMax is going to break it up that this keep is this structure, so when you go in here you have to move people to first and second floor. I wonder if they're actually going to do that, or if they're just going to keep a standard template that, you know, anytime you're taking a keep, flag A, flag B, and flag C are in these locations. Do you think they're going to change that up?
That is a really good point. I would say they should change it up because then it's just not a cookie cutter kind of Zerg. You know where everything is. If they change it up, it really keeps you guessing. That would make it much better if they were to do it that way instead of them being in the same locations.
Yeah, and it definitely adds a little bit to the strategy and a little bit to the, you know, defensive nature of some keeps, because some keeps will be easier to defend than others, because of their capture locations. And, you know, whether or not people will complain about this or not, I tend to prefer that, that certain keeps are more difficult to hold than others. I mean, and of course they're going to be scoring for seasons in this game, so to determine who's the winning side. I don't see why these harder to hold keeps, they should offer less points for holding them because they're harder to take. But if you capture them, you should get more points for capturing these hard keeps than the ones that are really, really simple. I think that'd be a nice scoring mechanic in ways that people could keep up in the Alliance War by, if you're really far behind, going, well, I could capture that one keep up there in Cyrodiil, but it's really easy. It's one capture point. You know, it's a Zerg fest. I can just keep capturing that, but it's only worth 1 point. But if I capture this one over here that's really difficult, that's worth 5, and that will get me a little farther ahead. I think that would be kind of a neat thing to see. All right. So now we're going to move on to our next section. This is the last part of news, which we discussed earlier, was the public NDA lifted a couple days ago. So we are now able to talk about our experiences in beta. And I know we were chomping at the bit there last week because we went over all the hands-on impressions, and we're just sitting there like rubbing our heads like, really? Guys, this isn't what we were experiencing. But we couldn't say anything at the time, but now we get the opportunity to say something. With that being said, we're going to do something a little bit different tonight, and that is going to be, we are going to combine our story time and our discussion into one topic, because I think both of us really just want to talk about our beta experiences, and I mean, we can really kind of make it like we do for our normal story times, but this is what we'll just combine it all into one. Why separate two things when in reality anything we would have mentioned in beta discussion probably would have been what we wanted to talk about for story time anyway, and what we experienced. So this is just going to be one giant mesh of story at this point. The one thing I will say right off the bat is we will talk about Quest, and we'll talk about stuff we experienced, but we're going to avoid going into the story of. We will be vague if we're like, oh yeah, we had to save a ship captain from, elves, but we're not going to go into the exact story going, yeah, they were trying to do this and they were trying to summon a storm god or whatever the case may be. That quest, that as far as I know, doesn't exist in the game, but we're going to keep away from the exact specifics of storyline quests so we don't ruin it for anybody. But we will be vague on that when we go through it. So, what we're going to do is we're going to take turns right off the bat, and then we're going to get into a little bit of discussion between Thais. Let's do this. For you, I want you to go through, and I want you to tell us what you were experiencing and what you were thinking the first time you got into beta.
All right, the first time I logged into beta, so that's really difficult because for the first time I logged into the beta, I think I spent an hour and a half just messing with the character creation because there's a lot of options.
Yeah, definitely the character creation is pretty cool. Before we go into the story, do you want to go into your story or do you want to talk about character creation first as a discussion?
You know what? I'll talk about my character creation first because that's always something that I enjoy doing very much when I'm playing a game. When I'm playing a game, especially an MMO, I like to become my character. Now, this is probably, and I can't even say that because in Guild Wars 2, I was a plant person. I was going to say this is the first game where I might choose something that's not exactly human, but it's really not. I'm considering a dark elf. And I was actually able to make my dark elf resemble me in some ways with the hairstyle and the facial features, and I was able to give her a really big, massive booty, which I enjoyed a lot. I like them bubble butts for some reason.
And likewise, I was able to give myself a massive booty, and we all know Aggelos with a big booty is a nice thing.
So I spent a long time looking that over. And from the character creation, the models look really nice. You can change like the shape of their hands and their feet. You can really do a lot with your character in terms of what you want it to look like. So then, right now I'm going to go into the game. And then I delved into the game. I was done with my character. I picked a dark elf, a spellcaster. I think it was just a mage. And I went into the game and I immediately thought, wow, these details are really nice. But of course, I was in the very first beta where there were still lots of bugs, so my first time in was, oh man, I'm stuck, nothing's working. So then I got back in again, and my thoughts were the same, like, wow, this is really detailed, and it looks so nice, and it looks so scary because it's dark and menacing, and it's exactly how I would expect Elder Scrolls to be in terms of the lighting, mostly because it was dark and menacing. And venturing forward through the tutorial section, the entire time I was playing, I kept rotating my camera just to look around at all the creepy things, because you are in fact in Cold Harbor, and I was creeped out, and oh boy, it was bad. So then, the biggest issue that I think I had, not that it was really an issue, because it still looked nice, but the biggest issue I think I had was how the character models looked. I just did not agree with the way that their clothing looked more like it was painted on rather than them wearing it, which to me is a big issue. Now, I play a lot in first-person view because, like I said, I like to become my character. So that's really not much of an issue for me. But when I need to be out in third person, I want my character to look like she belongs in the world. And with this rich, beautiful world that exists in Elder Scrolls games, the character models just don't really seem to fit. That was my initial reaction. So I'm in Cold Harbor, and there's just these gross monsters that are just attacking. I think they were Atronachs, I think. And
either that or soul shriven.
Oh, that's right. That's right. There were, yeah, the Soul Shriven. The Atronachs I like because they're really cool looking. I do like Atronachs. And as I'm walking around in Cold Harbor, because in some places it was kind of watery, and all I can picture in my head is, wow, this must really smell bad in here. So while I'm walking around, I'm actually getting this feeling that I can't smell anything, but my character must be thinking it can't smell very good in Cold Harbor.
Actually, and the funny part is during part of that one quest, you actually walk into the what they call the Undercroft, and that was one of the first lines Lydia Titanborn says, going, "Man, they didn't talk about the smell." So yeah, your character's thoughts were probably very true on that.
Wow, look at that. I'm pretty intuitive. I refuse to read any quests because I did not want to spoil it for myself for when I actually launch into the full game. So I read as little as possible. I honestly couldn't even tell you what the storyline is, except for you're in Cold Harbor and you're just, an empty shell. Other than that, I don't know. So then I'm in Cold Harbor, and again, it's kind of stinky. I'm holding my nose, walking around on my toes because I'm getting my feet wet, and I don't like that. And then you get to the part where you're finally able to leave, and it was really quite awkward for me in real life because my heart is pumping because I'm just so thrilled to get out and see the real world. And the doorway is there, and you're just about ready to leave, and I'm so ready to see the world. And that's where I'm going to leave off for now in my adventures and in Elder Scrolls Online.
Well, I'll go over my part because what I was thinking about doing for this is we will go back and forth and we'll talk about our different beta experiences. But I figured Cold Harbor would be a good stopping point. Then I could go over and talk about my experiences of character creation and Cold Harbor, and then we'll touch on the three starting zones because we did all of those. And then I know we spent a lot of time in the Evanhart pack, so I really want to explain some things on there. So we're gonna do like a zone per zone kind of your impression then my impression. That's why I tossed you that little note that says "Stop it, Cold Harbor."
It was actually really hard to finish talking because he's over here scribbling on my desk as I'm trying to talk. So I'm trying to talk out loud and read at the same time. It was quite huge.
Yeah, I apologize, guys. This is I have a rough outline for what we wanted to talk about here, but we were so excited, especially when the news dropped. Like I had already all the show notes written when the public NDA dropped, and I pretty much, if I had them in a physical piece of paper, I would have rolled them all up and threw them out the door at this point because I'm like, oh nope, I know what we're talking about. But all right, so we're gonna go with this method now. So this is very much we're kind of adapting as we go along about how we're doing this. All right, so I'll talk about my character creation, and I agree with Thays. My biggest complaint really is the character models as well, and not so much the character models as in the way they decided to put the armor on. Now, don't get me wrong, it looks really good graphic wise. Like the light, if you're wearing metal armor, which Thais wouldn't really know because she never touches metal armor.
Oh, gross. It just makes me feel icky and cold.
Yes, well, the metal armor is really neat because you'll see it like sun will glare off of it, and the light. It's really cool. Like flame will flicker off the metal parts. It's graphic wise, it's really neat. But I know what they did was they were just saying they designed their characters in a way that um, a whole lot could be on the screen at once. That's what they wanted. And they've rated their game up to 200 people on screen at once for their lowest setting, I believe.
That's why I couldn't really be too harsh. Because I understand that, and I think it was a good decision to make sure that there's enough people in the world for the world to feel alive. It was a smart decision. But that doesn't mean that in my head I'm not going, oh crap, I wish it looked better, because I do. But it was a good decision on their part.
It really was, because here's one thing I'll put in contrast here is Like the armor, for instance, part of it doesn't look like. Sometimes it feels like it looks like it, like you said, painted on, versus really kind of showing each individual plate, each individual. But another game that did this, Guild Wars 2, you could see each and every plate, you could see each and every little joint and facet. It looked really good. But they had an issue, and this was a big issue for them. A lot of people were complaining about it, the dreaded culling, as they called it, where your game client could not render as many models as were coming on the screen. So if you already were in a party of 50 people, you would run into what they were actually calling them a Zerg bomb, where what they would do is they would make everyone sit on top of a portal, and they would have one person run out into the group of enemies and open a portal, and your entire team would go through the portal and land right in the center of all the enemy players, and then do any kind of AoE you had. And you would actually be killing people before they could see you, because their game client wouldn't register that you were there. So that was a big problem Guild Wars 2 had for a long time, and if I still remember, still does have a problem. They tried to adjust some of the culling.
They adjusted how many people could go through a portal, so which effectively stopped them from being able to do that.
Oh, from the portal bombing. Yeah, I know they did that, but I was talking about the culling in general. I think that's still like one of the things they had to do is they had to show nameplates. Like they made nameplates show up, that you see nameplates first. They actually did something that was pretty similar to what Elder Scrolls is they loaded a basic generic model. Like they would load the first 10 people you saw on your screen in their full decked armor, but other people had placeholder models. In my case, I was a Human Guardian, so they would load Human Guardian Model 1, which was very basic. You could just tell there was someone there. Or in Thais' case, Sylvari Model 1, and that's what you got. It didn't show any of her unique customization, it just showed that there was a player there. And I know that was a big problem in Guild Wars 2. But one of the things you can tell is the way they designed it is I have a pretty beastly rig. Thais and I both have beastly rigs. And did you notice that when you were running up to people, how they looked kind of, I don't want to say fuzzy, but like their armor models got crisper as they rendered in. Like you could tell what they were wearing, but it was kind of generic looking up until they got pretty close, and then it rendered all the way. Did you notice that? Mm-hmm.
I actually did not. But again, I have the attention span of a goldfish. You know, oh, look, a castle. I love castles. Oh, look, a castle. I love castles. So I'd be looking at the one person, and then I'd look off to the right and see a bird, and then a butterfly, and then a piece of grass, and then, oh, the person's there. So that was not something I actually noticed. But that's pretty interesting that you did notice that.
Yeah, it really, you could notice it a lot when there were a lot of people around. Normally, if it was just like me and you running by, you rendered in really quickly. But now, if it was you and 20 other people, or if I was standing in the middle of town with all the NPCs and stuff, that's when I started to notice the lower rendered models, and then they got better as they moved in. It's a neat suggestion, and I know Thais and I both run on less than superior internet connection, and I experienced almost no lag during the thing. It was amazing.
None. I did not lag once, except for maybe the very first login to the game, the very first beta, but that's to be expected. Can't complain about that. But they really did improve. With each new beta, you could feel the improvements as you were playing, and the experience just got better and better. And there really was just no lag, none for me.
Yeah, and like I said, we're running on DSL, and it's very bad DSL at the moment. It's one of our giant hates. So we feel lag pretty profoundly, and this one, it was very, very few and far between that I had any kind of lag spike that was noticeable for me. So it was their net infrastructure is really well done. But all right, back to character creation. The actual character models, excluding the way the armor's presented, and again, armor's looks really good once it's fully rendered and stuff like that. But it does have that sense of being painted on rather than yeah, your character doesn't really look any thicker for wearing heavy plate than he would if he was wearing cloth. So bear in mind with that. Now, again, that may change coming down the road. Um, they always do graphics updates normally after a few years the game's been out, so there's always room for improvement. I doubt it will hamper anyone's gameplay, really. But the actual character customization is really, really neat. They have face sliders, which are similar to if anyone's played Rift. Rift has been one of my favorite games for character customization because when you log in and you look at the face, you have a triangle. It's a face triangle. And if you guys are unfamiliar with how this concept works, the 3 points of the triangle represent a very extreme facet of a character face. So the very top is a very thin face. The lower left hand side is a very fat face, and the right hand side is a very blocky kind of muscular face. Now, anywhere you move inside this triangle, this entire inside that triangle, you can move. So you don't have to pick an extreme. You can move it inside and get, okay, I want him to be a little thin, but I want to be a little muscular in the face. Like the skeletal model in the head, this is the way I want the head to look. Or if I want it to be very muscular, but a little bit towards the thin, the V, the V chin kind of shape, or the blocky round face. It's really neat how in depth you can get for the face, and that's just the skeletal model of the head. That doesn't really dictate what you can do later, because you have to go down and you can refine it further. But as you go down the list, you can adjust like the different eyebrows, you can adjust your cheekbones, so then you go further into your character model that you've designed and go, okay, do I want to move my cheekbones up and down? It's very much a almost more robust system than what Skyrim had. Because Skyrim had a lot of sliders and stuff of that nature. Now this one does too. I'd say on par, maybe slightly more. I will say this though, concerning the Elder Scrolls Online models and Skyrim models. The first thing you're going to realize is the art style they've chosen for this game is a weird hybrid. I won't say a weird hybrid, but a hybrid between the hyper-realism of Skyrim and the artistic kind of painted style of, I'll say, Guild Wars 2. The one thing I noticed right off the bat is when you zoom into the faces are very sheer and very, very intact, if you will. Like when you looked on Skyrim's faces, like you could tell like they had pock marks and stuff like that and laugh lines. These ones are very sheer models, like an MMO model, like the pretty faces, if you will. They do. I had a hard time making an ugly character in this game. In Skyrim, if you increase the age slider, your guy looked ancient. He really did. This doesn't really have that as much.
There is an age slider, but the biggest issue I had with that was it only aged your character's face. The rest of your character's face could look, 410, like you were all knocking on death's door, but you had the body of a 20-year-old, and that to me was just a little strange. It made me feel just awkward looking at that.
You know what that reminds me of? That that episode of Avatar, Avatar the Last Airbender, where he has to fight. He has to pick one of the guys. He's like, so I can pick anyone I see in front of me. And there's these two really muscular mercenary men and the old king. He's like, I choose you. And the king goes, all right. And he takes his robe off, and this guy's got like a 12-pack. I'm like, oh, dear heaven. It made the other two guys look terrible. That's just what went through my mind.
Wow, now all I can think about is The Last Airbender. Thank you! Attention span of a goldfish. You can't do that to me.
Alright. The other model sliders are really neat. Like, they have a lot of cool things as you go down. They got body tattoos. You can increase the size of your hands and feet for crying out loud. I don't know any other game that you could do. Yeah, I had really big feet, by the way. So I maxed that slider out.
Imagine clown shoes, because that's probably about the equivalent.
Well, when I shove my boot up someone's bum, I want them to realize that's what I did. That's why I picked the big feet. All right. The other thing that I kind of liked, and I like they stuck with this, is the hairstyles. The female hairstyles look neater than the male hairstyles. Like in terms of a modern MMO, they kind of got like the braids around. It looks pretty, if you will. Faces did a little face, so maybe she disagrees with that. Oh, she's shaking her head. Yes. Do you really disagree with that?
I really do. I feel like they could have done more for both the male and female hairstyles to make them look better. Because I'm not gonna lie, I like my characters to look pretty. I do. I just really want them to look pretty. And it was really difficult for me to find a hairstyle that embodied how I would want to look in this world. There was only one hairstyle that I was able to choose on a bunch of different races that I felt looked pretty. The rest of them were just ew. Ugh, I didn't agree with them.
Well, see, this is the part that I disagree with you on. Is I like that they're not pretty because the Elder Scrolls universe is not pretty. So I'm really glad they stuck away. Like I noticed there's mohawks in the game, but they were in Skyrim, and the way they design them looks okay. But I'm glad they didn't do any like the stylized faux hawk, the biff, the modern hairstyles for like guys and stuff, like the emo haircut. I would have been very upset if they did that kind of stuff because it would pull you out of the Elder Scrolls universe because the Elder Scrolls universe is dark, it's gritty, I shouldn't look like I have perfect emo hair with highlights. I don't know about you. It's just, we play Final Fantasy 14, and that world's different. It's okay. They have faux hawks, they have the emo hairstyles, they got the hair dye, whatever. But that's the world they created, and they write it into the lore that, oh yeah, whatever, we have hair dyes, we don't care. But I think that kind of system really would not fit in the Elder Scrolls universe to be able to dye your hair like I got highlights, so I got a feathered hair look. No, you got sheep shears and you cut your hair. That's what you did in Elder Scrolls. So that I am upset because I can't get my faux hawk because I love those things, but I'm happy that it's not there because it stays true to the lore. So yeah.
I have to agree with you there. If I was able to have a bubblegum pink, double buttons on the top of my head, that it just really wouldn't fit. So even though that's just me going, oh, the hairstyles, they're just ugly, I understand why, and I'm okay with that because there was the one hairstyle that I liked that I'll probably use if I do 4 races. It's the one I'm gonna keep choosing.
Likewise, I found one that I thought looked cool, so I kept it. And actually, you'll be seeing some screenshots loaded up on talesoftamriel.com of beta that I've been in that I wanted to highlight, and they'll be up there, so you'll get to see the hairstyle that I chose. But yeah, the character model is really, really neat. So I think they did a really good job. Again, our only real complaint's not the character model so much as the armor model, the way they decide to portray armor. I'm kind of hoping that they'll take some beta feedback and I'm not unreasonable. Game's too close to launch. It's not changing for launch. I'm prepared for that. But I would like maybe by the first expansion, maybe the second expansion, that they relook at the way the armor fits on guys and maybe figure out a way of keeping that server stability, the reason why they went with it, but upgrading so it makes it look like you're actually wearing armor. So after I create my character, again, this took me a while, and the worst part is, come launch, if any of you guys are going to want to play with Ace and we took off for the first week of Head Start. Don't expect to see us in the main game world for probably the first 3 days, just FYI. I spend a lot of time making my character. I will sit there and stare and adjust the cheekbone slider for an hour if I have to. It took me about 45 minutes to create my character for beta, and I spent no time. I felt like it was nothing at all because I just wanted to get in there and try. Um, and each time a new beta comes out, we've been in 5 or 6 betas or so. We've been in it since about middle of last year, I think, August or September. I can't remember. And each time I go through just to see if they changed anything up, and they pretty much kept the character creation roughly the same, maybe a few minor tweaks. But yeah, so 45 minutes was short for me. And I get into the world, and of course, Cold Harbor, the prison scene that everyone's used to from an Elder Scrolls game, it seems. And it's really neat because you're in there, like you can get into first person, you pull your fist up and you look around your cell, and the voice acting and the environment in Cold Harbor is amazing. When the voice of the prophet comes up, like as you walk near your cell, you hear him, and it's voiced by the guy who did Dumbledore. We talked about this like 2 episodes ago. It was really neat. You hear him, he's got that commanding voice, and it's just the atmosphere of the place. It is creepy. You walk through Cold Harbor, and there are like it is a literal hell when you go in there. You see people you see skeletons chained to the ceiling over steam vents. They were being tortured, like people were chained above these hot burning steam vents and were literally essentially boiled alive without being in water. You go through, you see piles of skeletons and skulls, and oh, it is dark. You hear screams in the background. You hear the clash of fighting because you're escaping. It is a dark world when you're inside that cell, and that first section is pretty neat. It's the standard tutorial section within Elder Scrolls, and each thing you go through, they have you pick up a weapon type, and you're kind of limited to whatever weapon you want during the tutorial. Don't worry for the people who are going to get this and go, what? I can only pick one weapon up, because I know the first time I got into beta, the very first beta I did, I ran up there and actually, no, it might have been the second beta, because the first beta that I was in didn't have the Cold Harbor scene yet. They hadn't edited. You just started in one of the starter islands. But I ran up and went and grabbed the weapon, and I'm thinking, like a normal Elder Scrolls game, I should be able to pick up all of them. For the tutorial, they limit you to one. So pick one that you're going to want to level with for a little while. It's only till you get out of Cold Harbor. The second you get out of Cold Harbor, you'll be able to pick up something else and carry them all with you if you want. That's actually what I plan on doing. And that's going to really suck because you only get 50 slots to hold weapons and stuff and gear and loot. So I have a feeling the first however many slots I'm going to need for one of every weapon type is going to be used up. So I'm going to have to run back to town every like 3 seconds to unload, because I can only ever carry one piece of loot and then I'm full. But I think I picked up a 2-handed hammer, and the first beta that I was in, my major complaint was that the combat it felt too floaty. It felt too, in Skyrim, when you swung a 2-handed weapon, your guy was committed. And some people don't actually like that. I've heard complaints about the combat in Elder Scrolls Online because they don't like that wind up. They want that fantastical, being able to swing a hammer around in a circle above your head and bring it down in 2 seconds. I actually like the combat of Elder Scrolls Online because they stick to that realism. A person cannot flip an 8-pound hammer over their head in a whirling motion like that and do it more than maybe 1 or 2 times before they're tired, or do it in a brief second. It's not going to happen. So I'm glad they went with that. But that was my very first complaint in the first beta, and as it went on, the combat just got better and better and better, and it felt more like I felt committed. I swung like one of the next betas I was in. I was prepared for that floaty light combat, and I went and did a heavy attack, and my character lunged forward and I couldn't stop him. I was like, whoa, 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 and there he went. And then I got a big smile on my face because I'm like, oh, awesome. So combat I really enjoy. If you like that fantastical combat where you know you have the hot bars, your guy swings his sword around, it tosses up in the air and brings it down, catches it, and then thrusts it in. That anime style sword fighting, you're not going to find it in Elder Scrolls Online. And if that's a game breaker for you, then I think you're not going to like this game. But if that's a game breaker for you, that's kind of sad. One thing about Cold Harbor, and I will say this is a public service announcement that is subject to change. Loot in Cold Harbor, because all those chests, they respawn. And that's the one thing about Elder Scrolls that's not going to be very familiar to a lot of people who play modern MMOs. Modern MMOs are very Care Bear. There, I said it. Everyone gets their fair share of loot. Everyone can tap the mine node. Oh la 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 la. We're happy-go-lucky. No, it's not like that in Elder Scrolls Online. Everything is not instanced to your character. Everything is. If someone gets there in front of you, well, you're SOL, to be honest. And you have to wait for that node to respawn, that chest to refill, that monster to respawn. Yes, the monster fighting, they want people to feel cooperative, so you will get your fair share of loot there. But if you're going after maybe a rare monster that spawned and someone else killed it, then you have to wait for a respawn. There's no chest or something that you can just go up and loot because he died. No. But for those of you who actually want to spend some time in there, you can really stock up. And each beta, they've added more stuff. And in the most recent beta, the one that that they opened up for the NDA to lift, they've increased the amount of items that are in there. If you want to get a jump start on crafting, if you want to get a jump start on collecting lockpicks, spend an hour or so inside Cold Harbor, inside that first zone or inside the Undercroft. It's going to be boring. I don't think it's boring, but after an hour of running around in a circle looting chests, anyone can say that's boring, but you'll come out of there with a load of crafting materials. You'll come out of there with a load of picks, which one of the big complaints I heard from one of the less subpar reviews was, I'm out of lockpicks. Where do I get them? They're kind of hard to find out in the world from what I noticed. So do yourself a favor, guys. Stock up. Get yourself lockpicks. It's not going to hurt. And for those of us who like to make a little bit of money in the economy, since, at least as far as I know, at the very beginning of the game, you'll be able to make some money pretty quickly by selling lockpicks if you farm a little bit to the people who rushed through that starting area and ran out of lockpicks. So you can really price gouge for lockpicks and stuff like that. So I know that's what I'll be doing. So you'll probably see me spamming and shout at some point after I do come out of Cold Harbor, going selling lockpicks. 20 gold per lockpick, or however much I decide I want to spend at that point in time, and make some money, at least to start off. So, that is my Cold Harbor experience. We're going to move on to the next part, is the starter islands, and I'll go first. We'll talk about the different starter islands and what we felt about them and things like that. One of the things I think that's jarring for people who played Elder Scrolls games then came into this MMO is the tutorial generally in Elder Scrolls games is the prison, and then you're unlaunched into a larger world. From what I've noticed in the Elder Scrolls Online, they take a little bit longer to get you into the world. Essentially, it's probably about the first 8 to 10 levels until you get out into a truly big and open world. Because each zone has a starting island that you get onto. Okay? For the Ebonheart Pack, it's Bleak Rock Isle. I think that's what it's called. Stros Mackay for Daggerfall, and oh crud, I can't remember the Aldmari Dominion one. It's something Roos, but who cares? They're a bunch of dirty elves anyway. these islands are generally small, and I take them as a get used to how we do things. Now, they're still bigger than what most people would think. Like, I think I described this to someone else I was talking to, and they're about as big as an entire hold in Skyrim. So, like, the entire hold of Falkreath, our Whiterun, our Winterhold, our the Rift, our Eastmarch. That section, in terms of walking from one side to the other, you could probably do that in Skyrim. Like if you pick the Rift, for instance, that's about as big as the starting islands are. The Rift. So I mean, there's a lot to do in these starting islands, but I think they kind of get you into their get you into the main story because this is where the main story kind of takes off for you. You learn about the Alliance War, you learn about what happened to you, and generally each one of these quests involve you helping out the locals in this area. And in true Elder Scrolls fashion, in each zone there are a set number of quests in the zone. Okay, and there's an achievement for you achievement hunters out there for doing all of it. But they give you an option in the Elder Scrolls Online, which is really neat. When you go through, you have to finish one part of a quest, and then you get up to the main guy who's the main starter of the island quest, and they go, "Okay, this is what I need you to do. I need you to find these people and tell us when you're ready to go." Okay? So you can pick and choose how many quests you want to do. Do you want to go find everybody and get the achievement? Great. You don't have to, though. You can literally go, no, you know what? I'm ready to go. And it starts the next part of that storyline sequence and what happens to you on those islands. So, I mean, that's kind of a very neat idea. Other games have quests like Warcraft, Rift, and stuff like that. The starting islands have a lot of quests, but mostly very few of them have quests that are meaningful to the main story or that bring people in and that they help you out later. Elder Scrolls does this. When you help those people, they show up later in your storyline. You don't help them, they will not. They will not be there. So that's kind of really neat to experience in the Elder Scrolls. But I know other games will have minor sub-quests that, you don't have to do. And but they really don't have a lot to tell the storyline. Each one of these other quests, though, have a real deep feeling for the world, and they really get you into the characters. But each one of these zones is kind of neat. Bleak Rock Isle, of course, is it's off the coast of Windhelm, that zone, and it looks very Skyrim-esque. You know, it's snow covered. It's kind of neat. It kind of reminds you of somewhere in Skyrim. Each one, though, has its own kind of unique flow, and the Daggerfall Covenant zone of Stros Mackay is a desert type zone. It's a big desert, and I think one of the big big open dungeons, if you will, on there is a Dwemer ruin, and the Aldmari Dominion one is actually, it looks like a Khajiit settlement of a type. And the one thing I really liked about the Khajiit culture is they got a really neat structure. Face, what do you think about the structure of the Khajiit?
You know, I honestly don't know if I played their zone as much as I played the rest. Because that's the one with the dirty elves, right?
Yes, it is dirty elves.
Then I did not focus as much in that one because the races didn't interest me. I don't enjoy those races. It's the dirty elves and the drug addict Khajiits. I didn't like it. So that's not one that I really remember very well because I just did not have fond memories of it.
Right. Well, I liked it because they got a very unique architecture. The Khajiit it's a mixture of like Japanese architecture and Indian architecture. So you walk in, it kind of looks like a Japanese style house, but when you walk in, it's kind of got that Indian kind of feel, like the drapes and the rugs, and very lush and lavish. It's kind of neat actually. Um, but now we play each one of the zones for a little bit. And these zones are meant for up to level 5, I think, but you can get off of them earlier. And I believe each zone after this has a smaller zone to go into. I can't confirm with the Daggerfall Covenant or the Dirty Elves, but after that, there's one more zone which is slightly larger than the starting island, and really kind of it shows you some of the harder type combat. I think there's dark anchors on there, and after that, which you should be around level 10 or so, that's when you start getting into the Elder Scrolls open feel. The very open. The next zone that I'll talk about after Thais goes was a huge zone. But yeah, so that was my experience for the first starter islands and the next part, which technically I would push the starter island and the next zone, which is slightly bigger, as one, really about the size of one normal zone, and I kind of clumped them together. Ace, why don't you tell us a little bit about the starting zones, the starting islands, and the zone afterwards, if you remember that. And you hit each zone and just tell us what you feel, what you thought, and how their structure was.
All right, I'm really bad with names. What was the zone with the pirate ship? There was no snow. Stros Mackay? Alright, that was the one that out of all the other zones, the one that really stuck out to me. Because I have an affinity for pirates. They're kind of sneaky and dirty, and I don't know why. I just, really enjoy that. And the zone was very beachy. There was just lots of water and lots of sand and tons of, mud crabs, which probably terrified poor Aggelos. And it's just, I really enjoyed that zone. And doing the quests for the pirates made you explore a large portion of this zone just to complete a simple quest for them. They had you go into this one cave, and I'm not particularly fond of caves because normally there are spiders lurking deep within caves, and it just drives me insane. But this one quest had you go inside caves, and it was just a great first experience. This was the very first zone that I entered into, and I absolutely adored it. I really did. And it was really difficult as well, because as I explored, I oftentimes would wind up at enemies that were way past my skill level, and it took a long time for me to realize that in order for me to not die repeatedly by the infamous mud crabs, that I needed to mess with my skill lines. And as a mage, the skills that you get are they're phenomenal. The way that they look, that I cannot remember what it's called now, but with the ice staff and you slam it on the ground and this just ice row shoots out on the ground in front of you, and I love mages. Not as much as I love my thieves, but I do love mages. And I'm not really a beach person. Ag will tell you, I hate going to beaches.
Was that cave you were in? Did it have a giant snake in it?
Yes.
Oh, that was the Dirty Elf zone, by the way.
Oh, the one with the Khajiit.
Yep. I was curious because as you were doing it, I'm like, wait a minute. You asked me about pirates, and I was thinking, like, you end up on a ship, and you are with pirates in the Daggerfall, but the difference between the stories, you get wound up with pirates on the Daggerfall, and you're helping them. Whereas the Dirty Elf zone, the Aldmari Dominion, you're being attacked by sea elves. I can't remember their actual elvish name, but Maomir or something like that. they're sea elves, and they're the pirates that have been launching assaults against the estab. Yeah, that's we were you were doing that zone. That's what it was.
Well, the reason that I had originally chosen that was because before Aggelos told me that the wood elves were disgusting cannibals, I actually kind of liked wood elves. But then after he told me that, that was it. I was done. I just want to murder all elves. Well, not all. I like the dark elves, but the high elves and the wood elves and the drug addict Khajiit, they can just all bury themselves in holes in the sand and just stay there and rot and die.
They got to be careful though when digging themselves holes in the sand, because Khajiit, you know, they might bury poop and stuff. Elsewhere is nothing but a giant litter box for them, really.
But see, that's really funny because I don't remember the architecture of the buildings because I really did not spend a lot of time in towns. I really didn't. There was way too much to explore everywhere else for me to go to a town and spend any time there. That just wasn't going to happen.
I was quite the opposite. I was drawn in by every. It wasn't just towns though. I mean, I could literally be on my way to a quest, and I saw a house. I'm like, that's really neat. So I'd hop in the house, and I wanted to see what all you could do in there. And almost every house in the game, you can at least go into. There's actually very few houses in Elder Scrolls Online that I've experienced thus far that don't have something in them that are blocked off. Because you know, in other MMOs, they'll have the main houses and stuff like that for quest givers that they'll be open, or this will be here, or the merchant side you can see the merchants, or maybe they have a stand outside, but the actual doors to the houses don't open. They're just background scenery. But almost every house I've found in, I haven't found one yet that hasn't been able to go into. So again, I've only played till level 12 or so on several characters, and been through a couple zones. But even so, the fact that each one of these zones, at least every house is able to go into, was pretty amazing to me.
That just makes me really sad because in Skyrim, I was the type of person to steal everything. I would go into your house and I would steal the underwear you were currently wearing while you were sleeping. That's the kind of person that I am when I play Skyrim. But in ESO, you can't. You can't just steal everything. So I wish I could. I really do. But you can't do that. So I didn't unlike Aggelos, I did not spend a lot of time searching out these houses. I was the person who was just exploring every inch, and in the snow-covered zone. That was
Bleak Rock Isle. Yeah, Dark Elf.
I remember being in that zone as a dark elf, and I had a quest on I think like the east side of a mountain. And I don't know why, but for some reason, I decided to just walk around this entire mountain. And as I did, I'm finding all these different nodes that I can pick up and I can gather, and I'm doing mining. And I found, I don't know, 3 different chests that I could open. And now, there are some places that are blocked off on the mountain, which is fine, but to get to this one chest, I actually had to figure out a way to scale part of this mountain on the back side. And there's me trying for like 10 minutes to get to this chest, and then all of a sudden I see someone else coming up behind me. Now, as Aggelos said, you have to fight for some of these items in the game. So when I see him, I'm thinking, oh, I don't think so, buddy. I've been here for 8 minutes now trying to get this chest. You are not getting this before me. So I'm jumping, I'm turning my camera, and I'm trying to run around. And as I'm doing this, I'm tapping the buttons to make sure I'm the first one that clicks on this chest. And I got it. I am so happy I was the one who got it. And then there's the task of using your lockpicks to open it. That is quite a learning experience trying to figure out how to really work these lockpicks.
This is one of the things I wanted to talk about was actually these symbols, and there are the different mechanics in the game, and the lock picking is one that is really neat. Like I like the way they did this. For anyone who hasn't seen the lock picking so far, when you go in, it brings up the lock picking screen, and you see a cross section of the lock, and you have to push down the tumblers in order to get it to push them in the right position and lock them. Here's the trick. For those of you guys who don't play with your sound on, you guys are going to have a hard time because there is an audio and a visual cue. The visual cues, you start seeing the tumbler go back and forth and wiggle. That's your visual cue, but that's not everything. There's a slight click noise that you hear, and that's when you have to let go of the tumbler to lock it in place. If you do it when it's just moving before you hear that click, it will pop back up. So players who don't have sound or in-game sounds on are going to have a hard time with lock picking. So I thought that was neat.
I think it's neat too. I think that that first chest I went after that I was able to snag before this other, you know, uh, person came up behind me. Um, oh, now I see. There goes my goldfish brain. What was I saying? Oh, I think it was not immediate, an intermediate difficulty lock, and that had been that's the highest lockpick difficulty level that I had found thus far. So for me, it was pretty difficult, and just like Aggelos, I spent about an hour in Cold Harbor collecting as many lockpicks as I could. So as I'm sitting there, I think I broke 3 or 4 lockpicks before I realized how to actually do the lockpicking. And then from that point on, as I continued around the mountain, I found 2 more chests that were also intermediate that I was able to open no problem whatsoever. But it's just for no reason at all. I wandered around the zone and I wandered around this mountain, and the mountain was gorgeous, by the way. Just the snow and the random critters that are just alive. I think I accidentally shot a bunny.
You know what was really funny is I actually contemplated making your title the Killer of Bunnies today. No lie, I actually put that in there, Killer of Bunnies. I'm like, maybe not, backspace. That's where we got to the Dwemer Spiderlings. But I did have Killer of Bunnies in there. Oh, and one more thing. I did find a lock that was higher than intermediate. It was in one of the towns in one of the higher up zones in Morrowind. And I think ZeniMax was trolling me because when you looked at it, it said lockpick, impossible. So ZeniMax is trolling me at this point, going, nope, can't get in this one. I don't know. Soldiers were, transporting. Apparently it was probably full of weapons and armor for soldiers, but it literally said impossible. I'm like, they just trolled me.
And you didn't try to open it? Because I would have tried.
Oh no, it was a total troll because the activate button was even grayed out. It goes, nope, sorry, impossible. Not even gonna let you try.
Wow, they definitely did troll you on that one. That's
Yeah, because I'm like, what? The chest probably had like the sort of epic slaying of doom. Like you open it and you become the first emperor right off the bat. And they were trolling me. Like, who knows what good things were in that chest?
you will never know, sadly. You'll never know.
Stupid ZeniMax trolling me.
Now back to this snowy zone. Now I enjoy winter. I really do. But my personality is not really that of a Nord. I don't think I should play a Nord, even though they're pretty. They're one of the prettier races, because I'm actually very cold-blooded and I get cold very quickly.
Nord Master Race, just representing.
So I don't in the cold zone. I probably should not play a Nord, but I did enjoy that as you're walking around this frozen zone, the rivers and any body that has running water actually had the frozen ice on top of the water that you could actually walk on to cross the river instead of swimming. And there were a bunch of times that I could swim across the river, but I didn't because I just wanted to jump around on the ice. So that's actually what I did. And there were a bunch of times as I'm running around this freezing zone and it's, the middle of winter here where we live and we're freezing our butts off, that I'm actually getting cold because the zone just looks so cold.
I love that zone, and it definitely was one of my favorites. So even though like we got the Explorers pack and everything like that, I've been contemplating making myself go to another alliance just so stand out. I don't know. It's just the Ebonheart pack keeps calling me, so we'll get near that closer to launch. Is that all you want to talk about for those starter zones? You have more to go.
Well, I'm trying to remember, let's see, because I talked about the Dirty Elf and the Dragatic Khajiit zone, and I talked about the Nord zone that I really enjoyed. I liked the Dirty Elf zone because I liked the overall tropical feel. Even though it wasn't really tropical, it just both zones were just so completely different that you can't help but enjoy them both for completely different reasons. And they both looked very real. Like when you're walking around in the snow, you're walking in the snow and it's crunching, and if you were to step on something else, the noise changes. That I love. I am a huge fan of sound in video games and how they go about making their sounds realistic. That to me is a huge aspect of my gameplay. And just even the sounds in the zones were completely different. But now that I've talked about those two, for the life of me, I cannot seem to remember.
Third zone is Stros Mackay. It's the desert zone. Do you? I think we played this a little bit because me and you were playing for a little bit. We both made Bretons, and we were running around with Bretons. Don't you remember the two of us going into? Because we actually played this zone. No, it was the Dirty Elf zone. We played that one together longer. That one we actually made it, I believe, all the way to the final quest of that zone that would have let us out. We have more experience in the Ebonheart pack, but I know we were playing at different times because you didn't get your client download, so we were taking turns playing on my computer that was updated. So we didn't actually get to play together the last beta test, and but that was the Albemarle Dominion zone, Coerthes Roost or whatever it's called, is the one that we spent the most time in. But we actually decided we wanted to check out the character models on the Daggerfall Covenant as well, and we started one there. Don't you remember that's the one where we were aiding the pirates, and one of the people we had to find, she was a smuggler, like you're trying to help out and find out you're taking part in a giant heist of some kind. I don't know what it is, and I didn't really go far into it, but there was that one little thief or rogue lady who was always showing up every 5 seconds. Remember, she was all in black. I thought she was kind of hot in a kind of femme fatale kind of way. Do you remember her?
Always into the bad girls. I actually do remember her now. I do.
My biggest landmark in that zone that I remember more than anything else was the Dwemer Ruin, because you had to go in there. One of the quests you got, you were trying to recruit a sorcerer to help you, but when you got to him, being the Altmer that he was, he was very into his research, and he refused to go until you retrieve for him some schematics from the Dwemer Ruin. And you had to go into the Dwemer Ruin. That's the first time we got to see the spiderlings for the first time. You had to go in there and collect the different clues because someone stole his schematic or thesis, and you had to go in there. Do you remember that?
He can like totally see the revelation just expressed on my face. Yes, I do remember that. And I really, really like that. The Dwemer ruins are always something that are completely fascinating. And I do remember that. And I remember And the reason I remember it more than anything is because when you said Altmer, and my absolute hatred for elves just kind of welled up inside me there for a moment. That was really pretty. I liked being inside.
One of my favorite parts is when you go in there, it's separated out. When you found everything in the main room, because this was, gotta remember, guys, this Dwemer rune is not as complex as the Skyrim ones. Later ones probably will be later, but it's the intro island. They want to make it pretty simple. Like it's the one section is a almost a cross shaped rune. Like it's essentially you walk in, it's the shape of a cross where there's um, different rooms and stuff like that you can go into. And once you find all the pieces, you actually unlock the door and go to the next section, which is a little bit more complex. But the neat thing that I noticed is there were booby traps on the bridge, as is custom for any Dwemer you go to fight. When you go on the bridge, you actually see a dead body. They rigged the bridge that shot hot steam up on the bridge. So you actually had to watch where it was shooting steam up so that way you could walk between the jets, the steam jets, because certain ones they went in a pattern. It would be these two, skip the next two, these two, skip the next two, skip the next two, skip the next two, and then go back in the pattern. So you had to be on the opposite one. My only complaint for this, and I understand why they did it, and I hope they change it later, the trap didn't do much damage. Like, even if you got hit, just like 5% of your life. I could see why they made it a little bit easy. Like, it didn't take much, because the intro level, they want people to get into their game. And people tend to get better the longer they play, but you don't want to turn someone off. If you can't beat the first level of something, then people get turned off too easily. So I hope the traps later on will be a little bit more punishing if you don't do them right. But yeah, that was one of my favorite parts of that zone.
One of my favorites, and I can't remember what zone it was in, but I can remember the quest that came from it, the ruins. I can't remember what zone it was in, but you had to go into these ruins, and you were trying to save this woman's mentor. And you're in here, and the entire time you're walking around, and you're doing this quest, you're in these ruins, and it's dark, and it's creepy. When you get to the end of the quest, it actually makes you really sad, because the one woman that you've been helping this entire time is saying that she's going to sacrifice herself for her mentor to get out. And it was just heartbreaking that this person is just ready to lay down her life for this other man, all because this ghost is just trying to escape into the world to wreak havoc. And it was just a really cool quest. I really enjoyed exploring this crypt. The only thing I think they could have done different was maybe they could have made, but then again, this, to harken back to Skyrim, make Draugrs pop out. Make it actually be scary if you're going to be in a crypt.
Well, that was in the Aldmar Dominion zone, and yes, I do know which quest you were talking about because we were doing that together. I think the problem with what you just said is making them pop out is MMO mechanics. Naturally, it's hard to script events when there could be 50 people running by the zone. So
I know that in my head. Like, I understand that, but at the same time, it's just, it's not as scary as it could be.
I will say this for you, though. There are certain zones and certain quests that are instanced zones. Like when I went into, and this we'll go into a little later, one of the zones is you go into a Daedric realm of Sheogorath. And when you go in there, I believe it's instanced to your party, because there were a lot of people running around, but I was the only one in there for a long time. Like I think at one point, I forget what it was, I went to go help you in the house with something, so I literally just put my guy on a rock, and no one went through. Like, no one. And no monsters came, but they do it is scripted to an event because as like there were no monsters spawning and they didn't respawn after you killed them. It was a scripted instance for you, and Daedra did pop up as I'm walking down the path. All of a sudden, I see the portal spawning and imps and scamps running out and Daedroth running out at me. So they do later on have that pop out feel for you. So you'll probably experience something similar, but only in the instanced story kind of zones. But that was really cool.
Well, good, because I enjoyed Skyrim because there was that element of terror, which I feel will happen in ESO, especially when we're trying to complete a Dark Anchor ourselves. And when things start spawning, it probably will be terrifying to a point, but I scare real easy, so.
Yeah, pretty much any time that we have to fight giant spiders. One of the first dungeons is actually an all spider dungeon. I didn't tell you that, but it's all spiders. It's out on Tamriel Foundry. They did a playthrough of the first three dungeons that in each zone, and one of them is all spiders.
Well, you will be completing that dungeon on your own, because yeah, there's no, not kosher in my book.
Right. Okay. We're gonna move on from this section. Unless you have something else. Do you have anything else to say about the first three starter zones? No?
Just that I wish my memory was better. That's it.
No problem. We're gonna skip the next part of the zone because we only did it on Ebonheart Pack, but as I was saying earlier, there's the starting island, and then you advance the story onto a second zone, which is again only for the next couple levels, only the next like 2 levels up to like level 8. It's small and will lead you on to the much larger zones that feel open world kind of ish. So it was like Balmolgan or something like that in the Ebonheart Pact. I don't remember. It was when you first land on Morrowind. And then you go into the next section, the Stone Fields, and this place is huge. Did you get a chance they used to play Stone Fields? I can't remember.
I can't remember either.
Okay, well then I'll just go over the Stone Fields since you can't remember what it was. But this is where, for me, the game stopped being as much MMO in a way and became more Elder Scrolls. The zone was huge. I mean, I for the first time I was playing, I was going through this and I had finished a bunch of different quests and things like that. And I mean, I cleared out a level of the zone because I'm a very systematic gamer. Just like Skyrim, when you finish a dungeon, it says cleared. In the Elder Scrolls Online, they have a similar system on your map. When you unlock something, you get a little black symbol on your map. Once you've completed the quest, all the quests that are associated with that particular area, it goes white. Doesn't mean you can't go back to it, but it just means that you finished the quest in that area. So it says cleared, essentially. So I went through this one big zone, and I've been playing for a couple hours at this point, going, well, obviously I must be done with this part of the zone, and I should be moving on. And then I open up my map. I'm like, yeah, this is about the same size as a Bale Modan or whatever it was called. And then I noticed, hey, my map scroller's only about a third of the way in. And I started scrolling out and out and out. And I realized I'd only completed about a third of the map. So the Stone Fields is about 3 times as large as Bale Modan, which is the zone directly after Bleak Fall, after the starter island. So I was thinking that the Bale Modan area was was what the average standard zone size was, and I actually found out I was very wrong. In fact, Stonefields was massive compared to that. So I'm going through the Stonefields, and I'm adoring it. I'm getting very into my Elder Scrolls here. Like, I am wandering. It still feels enough MMO. Like, I'm leveling skills. I'm leveling this. I'm collecting. I'm having a grand old time. But it feels very Elder Scrolls in the fact I went into a tavern, which actually turned out to be a brothel, by the way. I went into a tavern, sat down. Of Dark Elves, yes, a brothel of Dark Elves, they said. And I sat down. It actually let me sit at a table. I did the sit chair, and I pulled out a chair and sat next to the thing. Um, and there was a bard that started singing, and I sat there and I was listening to the music in this game. The bard was sitting there singing songs just like they do in Skyrim, and I adored that. I think I sat there for like 2 hours, and then like the beta ended, and then I got invited to the next beta. My character was still sitting there because they hadn't wiped my character, and I don't know why they did this, but I'm gonna have to write an angry letter to ZeniMax. They changed the female bard that was in there singing to a male Altmer, whose voice was terrible. So I promptly left that establishment. But there's a lot of adventure and stuff in here that you can just go and experience, like walk around the zones, listen to people talk. I think when I walked up to the brothel and I found out what was going on, I walked upstairs and I started seeing this dark elf dancing on a bed with a Nord laying on. To be honest, I thought it was a player trolling. You know how the players, they strip their characters naked and they do the dance. I walk up, it's an NPC. I can talk to the Nord, and I talk to the Nord. He's like, dude, get out of the way. You're blocking the show. I'm like, oh, excuse me. I'm sorry. I didn't know. And then I walked in the next room. There's another one, a topless male this time with a female, like stroking her hair. I'm like, I gotta get out of here. Either that or go downstairs and ask how much it costs.
Which is probably the more realistic thing that happened, because you noticed he said he sat there until the next beta. So he obviously didn't leave right away.
I sat in the bar. I didn't know there was illicit activities going on upstairs. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. The last thing I really want to highlight here for this zone, and one of the things that I really like, this is kind of mechanic talk. After I'm done here, we'll go on to another section. But one of the things that I loved is as I was exploring, I found a cave, okay? And when I walked in the cave, there was nothing in it. Well, that's kind of anticlimactic, don't you think? But there's all these different, like there's a hookah there. There's these different benches over the water. It's actually a cave into the side of a volcano, and the lava's hitting the water, so it's creating a kind of sauna. That alone is kind of neat. But I noticed that there is an anvil there, and there's a woodworking section and one other craftsman board. And in my mind, what I thought was, okay, you know what? I'm going to break down a couple of the weapons and stuff that I had. And so I went over there, and I found out that when I opened up the menu, it was a special anvil. This, I was so excited I could have peed myself. Essentially, if anyone's played old school vanilla Warcraft, the dark iron set and stuff like that, a lot of the high level crafted weapons you could make in the vanilla World of Warcraft expansion, I guess I should say. Did I say Skyrim or did I say World of Warcraft? I don't. Okay, good. For a second there, I thought I said in vanilla Skyrim. Sorry about that. You actually had to go out to a very specific. You could only smelt dark iron in the Black Forge, which was in the center of a dungeon, and you could only smelt stuff at the Black Anvil, which again was in another dungeon. So in order for crafters to go out there, they actually had to get a party, clear the dungeon, and then they could craft their wares. Elder Scrolls Online is bringing that back. When I got there, anything I created, it would open up my standard crafting menu and I could make my stuff, but it said because you're using this anvil, we'll add a special suffix to your weapon. It was like of the Nightfall. This was the only place that you could craft of the Nightfall items. So apparently you could craft a set of items. This was a set of gear that you could create that actually gave it set bonuses. And the set bonuses were very stealth oriented. Like, if you had this weapon, it increased the radius of your stealth, kind of stuff like that. And the more pieces you had that had of the Nightfall on it, the better the stat bonuses were. So crafters in ESO are going to be able to, they're not just going to sit in town, because if somebody wants a specific set, they're going to go to a crafter and go, hey, I want this specific set. that crafter is going to have to gather their materials and they're going to have to go out on an adventure and find those special anvils and those special crafting locations that allow them to craft the items like they normally would, and an iron greatsword of fire, but it has a special enchantment. This is of the nightfall, so that it gets those set bonuses. I adored that, and I wanted to talk about this the last beta so bad, but I couldn't because of the NDA. I'm like, I was just I want to talk about this and go. I was so excited. I'm like, I can't wait to tell our fans on Tales of Tamriel about this special anvil. It's gonna be so cool. But I couldn't talk about it till just now. So as soon as the NDA lifted, it's sad. But the first thing I said I'm going to talk about is this anvil. So I'm excited because this will be really neat for people to go out and mark these locations of saying if you want to craft weapons that have this special set bonus, you have to go to Stone Falls and you have to find this dungeon that's out there. That is really cool. Ace, do you like that or do you not?
I really do, but I'm not so much into the anvil thing. But for me, I would want it to be some way that it can be special mage or thief equipment, which that would be awesome. It would make me want to go out and try and find it.
Well, there are, and I only focused in on anvil because I do blacksmithing, so that's the first thing that jumped to me. But like I said, when I first went in the dungeon, there was a wood crafting, there was a like a cloth for clothes. So yeah, it's different areas. So, but yeah, so you will find those things. It'll be awesome, and you'll love it. But I'm not protecting you.
You know, you asked me, and I told you what I thought because you were saying mostly on the anvil, and you see, he still had to reiterate. Just sit over there and be quiet. But yes, I want to go around the world. And I want to search out all these things because they're there. They are there. And to have them hidden in the world really means that it's not going to be easy. And I don't want this game to be easy. I want it to be something that is kind of difficult, that leaves you scratching your head going, now, where could this possibly be? So when I do find it, like I said, I hope it's not a stupid anvil because anvils are loud and, annoying. I want it to be some other thing that I'm interested in to be able to craft this unique armor, and then I'll probably be sitting here with all my sticky notes around my TV of all these special locations.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. But yeah, that's going to be the end of our beta experiences for the most part. But I did want to go into one other section. I want to talk a little bit about mechanics, particularly the class system. Have you played all the classes or most of them?
Yes, I did. I played a lot with the thief class. That's the Nightblade. Then I did the mage. Now there was one that I know that I didn't do, and the other one that I did, but I can't remember what two of them were.
The four classes are the Dragon Knight, the Templar, the Sorcerer, and the Nightblade. Yeah. The thing with these is I wanted to highlight these a little bit because the classes, the one thing I like about Elder Scrolls is you really can do anything you want, but the classes really do augment you in certain ways. If you have a type of playstyle you like to play, you might be better off just going with that particular class, if you will. The Dragon Knight tends to be a very heavy fighter, if you will. They are the stereotypical warrior melee class. They fill that warrior archetype. And the Templar is the archetype healer. The Sorcerer is the archetype cure caster. Again, anyone can cast with a staff, but they get bonus stuff. And the Nightblade is the thief archetype.
The Templar I didn't play because there was nothing about it that interested me. It felt too much like, in my mind, it felt too much like a paladin, which I've never played before. It's just not, the heavy armor is what I picture it to be. So I didn't even give it a chance because I didn't think I would like it. But the other three that I tried, I did enjoy. I enjoyed the mage so much more than the other two that I tried because I liked the action that they went through to cast spells. I liked the way that the spells looked when they were being used to attack after the casting. I liked being able to summon my little minion. Just all the aspects surrounding the mage itself, I really enjoyed more than the other two.
And I'm going to say this: some things that are kind of neat about the classes are don't take them as one thing or the other, okay? Because even in beta, people have found one of the big play styles that have been going out are the Dragon Knight Battle Mage, because a lot of the passives that you got from the skill lines in the class lines that are unique to a class in Dragon Knight augment the fire destruction staff really well. So you actually see Dragon Knights being casters more often than not. And the what I've seen Templar's been doing a lot is the bow and the ranged one. I can't remember the name of the skill line now, but it has all the ranged light dots on them. Those have been very popular. And from what I hear, one of the best healers actually is not a Templar, which feels the healer archetype. It's actually the sorcerer, because the sorcerer has a lot of passives for mana regeneration and reducing the cost of mana, or not mana, magicka, stuff of that nature. So there's a lot of things that go back and forth. Like the different classes do different things. You can do a lot. You don't have to play a sorcerer and go, I'm limited to destruction, or I am a Templar and I'm doomed to healing for the rest of my life. You can augment and go back and forth. Like just because you're a Dragon Knight doesn't mean you're bound to heavy armor and sword and shield. You know, you can do other stuff, which is really neat. Do you have anything else to say about classes?
I personally disagree with the notion that any person can pick up any weapon. If I'm playing a mage, I feel like I should not be able to equip a bow and pew pew arrows at wolves. But again, that's just me. But in regards to the skill lines, you're not locked into anything. Yeah, the classes have their own class traits, but that is something that, again, it just adds to the openness that you expect from any Elder Scrolls game. That anything you pick is not cookie cutter. You can build it to be anything you want, which later on is gonna breed a lot of different and interesting combinations. And I'm really looking forward to see the combinations that the players come up with, because you're going to be in PvP one day and you're just going to get rocked by some random person that you don't know what they're playing, because you can't figure out they have a bow but then they're healing and all these different things. And it's really going to come to play a lot in PvP, I think, more than the PvE aspect of the game. So that's something that's going to be quite amazing later on.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Okay. Do you have anything else you want to talk about beta before we end this our story time discussion section?
No, I'm good.
Well, I have a lot more I wanted to talk, but I'll save that for a later episode going forward because we'll add it in later. Because I can add it into other discussions because I have a few other ideas, and instead of wasting them all now, I'll roll them into other shows. So we're just gonna move right along, and we are gonna move into the dramatic reading. This is Thais' favorite time. She loves reading these books of the Elder Scrolls universe, and I love having her do this. This week, I picked one of my favorite books concerning the early history of the Elder Scrolls universe. If you guys played Skyrim and went through the Mages Guild quest line, you should be very familiar with the book that we picked. This week, we present to you The Night of Tears, an exploration of the elves' attack on Sarthal. So, Thais, why don't you go ahead and read?
The author of Night of Tears is Janor Saleth. Sarthal holds a prominent place in Skyrim history, even if most do not remember it by name. It is of course the site of one of the first major Nord settlements, one of the first cities of men in Skyrim, and the earliest known capital of their civilization. It was also the site of terrible bloodshed, when the elves attempted to drive the Nords out of Skyrim, to succeed only in incurring their wrath in the form of Ysgramor and his fabled 500 companions, who swept the elves from Skyrim and firmly established it as the home of the Nords. All this is known, but little else. What happened on that night of tears, when Sarthal was razed to the ground? What provoked the elves to such a deliberate, vicious attack, and what prompted such a severe response from the Nords? Vingalmo's treatise on the Altmere antecedents suggests that the elves of the Merithic era, along with their counterparts, the early Dwemer, possessed a degree of sophistication unparalleled in Tamriel. They displayed power beyond what could be expected of the time. While a distinct explanation is not given for this, I believe that this work, compared with the early writings of Hesef Chirirnus, suggests that something greater was at work on that night in Sarthal. The true motives behind the Night of Tears have been obscured to us by the passage of time, but I believe this was not a simple war of territory, or of control of Skyrim. I believe that what happened was a significant event based around something very particular. The Nords found something when they built their city, buried deep in the ground. They attempted to keep it buried, but the elves learned of it and coveted it for themselves. Thus they assaulted Sarthal, their goal not to drive the Nords out, but to secure this power for themselves. I believe Ysgramor knew something of what the elves would find under Sarthal, and rallied together his people to keep the elves from gaining it. When Nords once again controlled Skyrim, this power was buried deep below the earth and sealed away. Time has kept this knowledge from us, but it is my hope that time will also reveal the truth of these words. Every effort will be made to relocate Sarthal and find that which has been lost to us.
Thank you, Thais. That was awesome. I actually adore that quest chain in Skyrim, so I'm actually curious if we'll be able to see Sarthal in Elder Scrolls Online. I mean, it's going to be in a ruined state because it, was destroyed a long time ago, long before the events of Elder Scrolls Online. But I'm curious to see what state it's in, if we'll be able to visit it. All right, we're going to move on to the next section here. It is our community spotlight, and this week's community spotlight, I have chosen to spotlight Maluka. Many of you have most likely already heard of her, but I want to spotlight her contributions to the Elder Scrolls community. Maluka is an amazing artist and composer who has provided us with a lot of her own renditions for many of the bard songs we hear from Skyrim. She also wrote an original creation called The Beauty of Dawn for the Elder Scrolls Online. I think her voice is amazing, and she's really brought a lot of life into the NPC songs in Skyrim and a lot of other games. She does different renditions for other video games as well. I think there's some Halo in there, and a whole bunch of other songs that she's redone for them. She also actually works with a lot of other artists as well, and they do a lot of collaboration work. So if you're interested in checking out her site, you can go to www.maluka.com. Maluka is spelled Malukah. If you also want to hear her song for ESO, The Beauty of Dawn, you can find it on the main Elder Scrolls Online website under the Media tab, and then you should see a section called Maluka. You should be able to find it there. I want to thank you, Maluka, for bringing such beauty to the Elder Scrolls community. All right. This week, we actually received our first email from a listener, and I wanted to go over this. The first email we got was from Colin, and Colin writes, "Hey guys, I love your podcast, hearing the stories from your games and the book readings. It is very well done, and I'm looking forward to hearing more from you." Thank you, Colin. That's very nice of you to say. He goes on to say, "I started with Skyrim. Hands down, it's my favorite game. Now I'm working backwards to play the older games. Can't wait to get into them. And he just bought the anthology the night he wrote the email. His question is about the Elder Scrolls Travels. Have we had any chance to play them? They look very interesting, but I guess you can only play them if you have an older N-Gage phone. Again, thanks for making the podcast. First off, thank you so much, Colin, for writing to us. It was a pleasure to see the email in there. I was very giddy when I saw it. I know Thais and I both, we actually, neither one of us have actually played these Elder Scrolls Travels, but you know what's really funny is when I first bought Morrowind, if you bought the anthology, you'll see this. You'll actually see when you're installing the game, it does a little advertisement for Elder Scrolls Travels. So I actually been thinking about these for a while. So I did a little bit of research on this because you got me thinking about it. And one of the things that I found out was there's actually 4 game titles that was released under the Elder Scrolls Travel series. It is Stormhold, Dawnstar, Shadowkey, and Oblivion. They were released in 2003, 2004, another one in 2004, and 2006, respectively. Each one was actually developed for Java-enabled cell phones, so it's not just the N-Gage. Apparently, you can play them on some of the older cell phones, a lot of the old Nokia phones, and a few of the old Samsung before the move to an Android operating system, I believe. As I was looking through it, the Shadowkey was developed exclusively for the now defunct N-Gage. That's the only one that was done only for the N-Gage. The other ones were for older phones. Now, the one thing I wanted to note was from reading going on is actually there was a rendition of Elder Scrolls Travels that was supposed to come out on the PSP, actually, but it actually was never completed. The article I'm reading on here says, a different game than the mobile version titled Oblivion for PSP was never completed. It was unrelated to the Elder Scrolls Travels games in that it was created for the PSP instead of the phone and featured improved graphics and similar gameplay to the console PC versions. However, it was planned to lack the free-roaming gameplay usually associated with the Elder Scrolls series. According to executive producer Todd Howard, the game would have featured 10 levels that look much like areas in the console version, but more concentrated. 18 out of 21 skills from Oblivion were present. There was never any official reason given for its cancellation or even official confirmation that it was canceled, but judging from how many years ago it was, I imagine they aren't going to release that. I did notice, and I'm going to hold for this because I neither confirm nor deny this, but there are several websites out there that I'm going to look into that seem to have Java versions of the game that you can get for download. I'm not going to mention any of them yet because I would like to test to make sure that they're actually legit, not fraudulent. But I would imagine the games are still out there somewhere that you could probably get for an emulator of some kind, because they're just written in a simple Java-based format. You might have to run it in a DOS box or something like that, but I can't imagine that they're not out there somewhere. And I'm actually going to look up and see if I can find if they're out there anywhere, if I can find them without having to dig out an old cell phone or something. So, but thank you very much for the question, and if I ever do find anything, I'll be sure to bring that up in one of the episodes. All right, that leads us to not my favorite part of the show because it's the end of the show, but it's time for our final thoughts. Thais, why don't you go ahead and give us your final thoughts for the show this evening?
My main thought is NDA is lifted. It feels really good to get all that pent-up beta energy and information out into the community. That's just a great feeling. And my second thought is I feel like you chose that book on purpose because you know how much I can't stand those particular dirty elves, and they were attacking the Nords, which are a part of my favorite grouping of races. You did that on purpose, and I know it.
I was just looking for a book, and I really liked that idea. That's all it was. That's all it was.
Well, it was a good book. I enjoyed reading that. So nice job on the book again. And it was a great show. We got a lot of information out there. I thoroughly loved being able to talk about my beta experience finally. I can't wait to talk about it more on the next show. So it was a great show.
Excellent. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. For final thoughts from me, I mean, the beta, like I said, I was gushing at being able to talk about a whole bunch of different things. And as soon as they said public NDA was lifted, I was ecstatic because I'm like, I finally get to talk about all these things that I've been playing in all these different betas, and to set myself right for a lot of the bad reviews that were out there that I just wanted to tell people. Like, even in the last show, I was like, they're playing a game that I'm not. Like, that's what I felt like, that they were not playing the same game that I was. So I finally got to sit down and talk about what all I love, and I hope you guys really, really get to come from a gamer perspective. I'm not getting paid for my my comments or anything like that. This is all from my enjoyment, and I am a very big MMO player. I am also a very big Elder Scrolls player. So you're getting both sides of the spectrum from me. Things that I both enjoy, things that I understand are MMO, things that don't even bother me that they're MMO, because MMO systems, I think, need to be in the game in order to provide a certain type of length and to the game that people will keep coming back for. Because honestly, the single player Elder Scrolls games, if it wasn't for the modding community, a lot of people probably wouldn't be back playing them as often as they are. I mean, they're very large and whatnot, but I've spent almost a year's worth of time in Warcraft. In hours, it's been over a year. I've spent about 700 hours in Skyrim. I mean, Guild Wars 2, I spent 700 hours leveling up and getting my character the way I liked him. You know, 700 to 1,000 hours is commonplace in an MMO. That's kind of like breaking it in. And it's not very much the case for single player games. So you got to have those MMO systems that people go in and try to do. If you can finish it the first try, people will rip through your content in a matter of weeks and never want to pick up your game again. So I was really glad to be able to talk about beta experiences. But I want to thank everyone so much for listening to this podcast. As always, I love our fans and the people in the Elder Scrolls community, how much you've supported us in this. I'm ecstatic to make more. Like, I wanted to make podcast episodes for myself because this is something I like doing, but I was not expecting the amount of positive reinforcement and support we've gotten from the community, and you guys make me want to come back and do this even more. So I want to thank everyone so much for that. If you guys have any questions, comments, or criticisms, you can do so on our website for the show, which is talesoftamriel.com, or by emailing the show. We do have a new email now, which is podcast@talesoftamriel.com. The old email address, talesoftamrielpodcast@gmail, will still work. I just have it forwarded to the other email because our new host provider, now we have our own emails for the show that use our domain. So I decided to kind of move away from the old Gmail address. But both will work. You can also follow the show on Twitter @TalesOfTamriel, our own Facebook facebook.com/TalesOfTamrielPodcast. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we hope you enjoyed this episode of Tales of Tamriel. Good night.